I keep changing the angles because I'm in a whole different room and on a whole squeaky chair. Wow, did the past week get away from me? Did we have ridiculous amounts of change in the weather that caused big migraines? Yes. Did we have things going on with my hair that make me want to cover it again? Yes. Am I in a whole new room for no reason other than the fact that I was like, oh my God, you could see me in daylight? And my room, I didn't feel like dealing with the shades because like who knows if they'll ever come back down again. Yeah, so hi, I'm Alana Phelan, the polyamorous librarian, which is a whole other thing. But I wanted to talk about some books because I messed my weeks up, didn't look at my calendar because I thought, oh, nothing comes out till the 5th. Wrong. So wrong. One of my books drops today, so I am rushing a little bit to get this out. Did not notice until Twitter was like, happy book birthday, A Magic Steeped in Poison. A book that I have been like raving about for a week and didn't do a video on because I thought I had another week. I wanted to talk about this book by Judy I. Lin. I wanted to talk about the other book that I read that's coming out next week. I have like 3 books coming out next week, which is why I got confused and thought this 4th book was also coming out next week. Nope. Let's get to it. So, A Magic Steeped in Poison. YA. Magical. It is a beautiful book. It is beautifully written. So when we have like all these books that are out there, a lot of times, even when they're written by people of color, they are written from a very American perspective because YA is predominantly not only just white, but American, and almost entirely out of New York, which is why for so long a lot of stories take place in New York and New Jersey. As a kid, I never really had to worry about being represented in books about kids because so many of them took place basically in my backyard by people who look like me. Because I'm from New Jersey. Now, admittedly, I'm from the souther part of New Jersey than usually what you see in those books, but I have family who are a little bit more north, and so I never had to worry about being represented. And this happened over and over and over again for decades of my life. But also, like, America has always been represented. These, like, American experiences in the writers. So even when you have authors who are writing characters, they're writing them from this concept of like American exceptionalism, American independence. You see a lot of heroes who are doing things and maybe not just for themselves, but there's this very much like one person can do a thing. And I really love that this book pushes back on that in a way that felt to me like, screw your American heroes. This author is not American. She's not white. I think that that makes a difference. I really do. Now, I could be extrapolating based on the bio information and the cultural information, but also, like, it's just good to see a different kind of hero. And I believe that, you know, I've been reading a lot more diversely with adult works, and I think that that's in there too. You know, you see these characters being raised up as like the one, and there are a lot of Asian writers pushing back on that. And I really love that. So like this idea, you're so special. Well, what does it matter to be special if you still have a community? and you're responsible and beholden to that community. And I think that that's really interesting here, because you have this, I need to do for my sister's story, which you could say, oh, I'm going to, compare this character to like Katniss or something. And you cannot compare this character to Katniss. It is bullshit if you compare this character to Katniss just because she has a sister she needs to protect, right? So I am very happy with having books like this that are published that don't need to go at these breakneck paces, that don't need to follow these trends that have been going on in YA for a really, really, really long time. So I was very pleased to read this book. I thought it was beautiful. I think that actually the pacing of the book and the writing of the book are two different things. So the writing makes it feel very languid and beautiful. Like you're reading these descriptions of food and tea and the environment, and at the same time the plot is moving apace. That's really amazing, and it's a balance. It's a harmony that a lot of authors can't get. Either they get really bogged down with it, all these descriptive words. I mean, like, I'm thinking about like when I went back as an adult and read like Anne of Green Gables, I'm like, oh my God, there are like paragraphs and paragraphs on all of this like environment stuff, like the trees and the flowers and all this other stuff. And I never felt bogged down. I just felt immersed. And I really, really enjoyed that about that, as well as the plot, which I think is a great plot. And I'm very excited for the second book whenever it may come out. So it's a first. I'm thinking duology, but I did not look that up. It definitely has the feel of a duology. I'm so glad we're seeing more duologies over trilogies now. But hey, if it is a trilogy, I'm in for that too. Okay, next book. She Gets the Girl, Rachel Lippincott and Allison Derrick, a married couple writing their first YA together. It's a cute one. I really enjoyed it. You've got your two POVs for your two characters. One has anxiety. One is trying to prove that she is like not a player and can settle down. And so she decides to help the one with anxiety get the girl, which is someone that she's had her eye on since high school. And so she's like, okay, perfect opportunity. I'm going to like come out of my shell. I'm going to get to know this girl that I've had a crush on for 4 years. And along comes this disaster of a human being who's like, yeah, no, I can get anybody. So why don't I just help you? It's cute as heck. I would say my only criticism is that the end feels very rushed, and that for someone who, someone who's really invested in having these romances, especially in YA, that break down really toxic ideas, I think that they go for it, but because the ending is really compressed in certain ways, that they're coming to these like epiphanies really quickly. And I think if someone had told me like, oh, the end's really rushed, I wouldn't have felt like, oh, okay, that's fine, because it is fine. I wish somebody had like kind of warned me, so I'm kind of warning you, because you feel really good, and then you're like, oh, well, that went really fast, and I kind of wish they had like taken a little bit of a breath. Like, if that's the worst thing you can say about a book, then it has done its job, especially for two authors who are working together for the first time. That's actually really excellent, and I'm very proud of them for doing what they did. You know, two authors working together to put out a romantic book that's sweet and funny at times and awkward at other times, and gets into some really good things about putting, I don't want to like spoil their emotional journeys, God forbid, but puts out some things about getting space from your family and really dealing with that on multiple levels from both characters. So I really love that. But also like recognizing what's healthy and what's not healthy. I do think that sort of bringing into YA this concept of like, oh, I have my first friend, and of course they're the love of my life or the love of right now or whatever. It's not my favorite, but I really wish that we had seen like a stronger support system in terms of like friendships, but I do think that that's there. I think that I might be personally a little bit old school in terms of like teaching to kids through YA, through relationships. And I think that might just be who I am as like as a person who has done like education classes and like relationship classes and things like that, like for the relationships that I'm in and have been in, and the relationship style that I practice. I think it might be a me thing. This is definitely not a criticism of the book. It might be me sort of trying to figure out what it is that I expect as an adult in books. Because sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm just in this for the ride. And then other times I'm like, I really feel like you should have taught those children more. So what is it that I'm looking for, right? But I think here there is sort of a set expectation that these two characters are going to come out on the other side healthier and stronger. And to me, being a healthy person in a relationship means having a strong support system, a little bit stronger than they are in the book, because it is a big deal, the lack of support systems that they have at the beginning of the book. So I think, as someone who kind of obsesses over support systems and like teaches about them, that I think I was sort of looking for that, and that when I didn't get it at the end, that was me putting like what I look for in real life onto a book. Make sense? Okay. And then finally, I just want to do like sort of a quick look at like Chip Zdarsky, because that is mostly who I read the past couple weeks. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to go like all over the place, but I did. I read Jughead, I read Daredevil, I read Stillwater, and I read Howard the Duck. So I feel like I got like a really good range of how he writes. And I have to say, the only thing I didn't enjoy was the Jughead. And I don't think it was him, actually. Like, at first I was like, because I know him primarily as an artist, right? From like Sex Criminals. And so the Jughead was the first one I read, and I was like, oh, well, maybe he's just like not, except it wasn't actually the first thing that I read. I was like, oh, Stillwater, I've read Stillwater, I enjoyed Stillwater. And then the second Stillwater dropped, and I was like, oh, yeah, let me catch up on that. I read a bunch of other stuff, and I was like, wait a second. He is like really versatile, and I think what happened with Jughead was either I had expectations or the book has expectations where you can't go too goofy because you still have to be in this sort of like range of what Archie comics are or something, right? It felt like when I read Howard the Duck, I was like, this is so funny. This is so good. What's going on here? It just felt like there were some constraints. I'm like, oh, there were some constraints with the Jughead. But seriously, I felt like it either couldn't be goofy enough or he wanted to be a little bit goofier. And either way, it straddles this line that's just not satisfying for me. And then everything else was. And I thought that Daredevil would be maybe too goofy. No, it's really great. Like, I read No Fear, K-N-O-W, Fear. And I was like, wow, this is a great Daredevil book. Like, I really like Daredevil when I actually get around to reading Daredevil. Like, he's not one of my favorites, and then every time I read a Daredevil book, I'm like, I forgot how much I like Daredevil. Every time. But yeah, no, I mean, like, I thought maybe he'd lean into like the funnier I'm not Daredevil, you know, like where he wears the shirt to the the sweater to the Christmas party, but like, no, he took Daredevil very seriously, and it's really good. And then there's Stillwater, which is about a town where nobody can die or age or anything. And that's a really great title. And the second book feels very repetitive compared to the first book, but I'm thinking that when we get further ahead, that's going to mean something. That we're going to see that it's really like a second verse was same as the first, and that's going to tell us something about like structures of power and things like that. I don't want to like spoil anything because it's the second book, but yeah, I like recommend all of it except Jughead, and I'm pretty sure that everybody else is like, yeah, no, I love Jughead, and I would just be like, but I've never loved Archie. So as far as I was concerned, Archie comics exist literally for a love triangle, and I could get better love triangles anywhere else when I was a kid. So again, it's a me thing. So that is what I read in the past week or so. Otherwise, I am making my way through The Great Gatsby, which is, holy crap, way more gay than I thought. I thought there'd be subtext, not the end of chapter 2, where he blatantly has sex with the effeminate man at the party. Why didn't anybody tell me this? Like, you guys learned that stuff in high school? Did your teacher just skip over the fact that the guy, like, gives a hand job to an elevator lever? What did your teacher say to you? Or is this like when I read The Maltese Falcon and I was like, the secretary is desperately in love with the femme fatale and no one else is noticing it but me? What is this author trying to say about like lesbians versus the fact that he like hates gay men? I'm really confused. I never read it in school. We didn't have to read it in school, so I'm very confused about what's going on. If somebody could just like tell me what the point of The Great Gatsby is. The only reason I'm reading it is because we have this book club thing where this month we have to read like one of the oldest books that we have lying around on our to read list, and I picked it up at a book sale over 12 years ago. It was the shortest book on my list, and I have these like tons of other books coming out next week, so I was trying to like run through it really quick, but instead I'm just like, what is going on here? Everybody's way older than I thought too. I thought they were going to be like really young and just like, they're not. I mean, I didn't think they were teenagers, but I didn't think they were in their 30s. I don't know why. I do think it's interesting when like you just have to guess from, I don't know, life, what these like major works are about. So yeah, if someone could just tell me what The Great Gatsby is about, that would, like, that was a blatant sex scene, right? Like, ... And then 3 hours passed and he was in his bed. And I was getting dressed to go catch the train home.